This is The Common Denominator, and I'm Ilana Rachel Daniel. Welcome back to The Common Denominator. I'm Ilana Rachel Daniel. The subject matter and myriad considerations of conducting a war are new to both myself and presumably are largely so to our listeners from Western states whose countries do not require a mandatory army service. Urban warfare, however, both in general and in the layout of battle inside Gaza specifically, present difficulties and multi-layered dangers that are entirely new, not only to those listening, but for the IDF who meets inside Gaza challenges which no army has faced before, ever. There are few comparisons from the past available with which to illustrate what Israel's soldiers have and continue to confront and succeed in Gaza, and what has become abundantly clear is that their achievements will be studied for years to come. If ever the joke of 2 Jews and 3 opinions was true, and it is, we must take note first that there is an overwhelming cohesiveness in Israeli society and in our collective understanding, which includes Jews and champions of civilization worldwide, that the threat to our country, our lives, and all that we cherish is immediate, it's existential, and it will be of primary consequence to the region and to the world at large. It is the role that Israel and her people play that is vastly and deliberately misunderstood, and what we seek to right in what we speak now. The threat we meet with comes from enemies north, south, east, and from within. It comes almost all at once, and with the understanding that we were well and truly asleep. That we imagined, despite all evidence to the contrary, that this in-between quiet signaled intentions for further quiet and perhaps getting on with our lives, and not the strategizing, gathering, and collective planning for war that it was. There can be no honest dialogue of this war without recognition, first and foremost, that Israel, both country itself and 9 million citizens, are urgently and immediately under a peril that, should we fail to overcome, will mean the catastrophic death and destruction of a nation, of a democratic country, however flawed, and of a people who have reflected to the world both its decay and harbinger of what awaits them next. Nothing less than understanding this will bring one closer to clarity in the chaos made of our precious and fragile world. Intention is still yet everything, and Israel, as does Hamas, make their intentions absolutely plain. Israel's clear aim is the maintenance of a state of self-determination in dynamic progress, while Hamas's, and the many who share their intentions since Haj Amin al-Husseini established them 100 years ago, is to destroy the life of every Jew in the land of Israel and far beyond it. The losses to civilians in Gaza are tragic, as are those lives in Israel. This is the reason sane people and nations take great pains to avoid war, for the destruction which accompanies it does not take orders of restraint from outside. For all the lopsided media rhetoric and hysteria, Israel's intention, if nothing more than as our own strategy of this war, is to save Gazan civilians inasmuch as Hamas takes extraordinary and unprecedented measures to ensure their death. In great absurdity, it is Gazan lives themselves which are the battlefield, inside homes and schools and hospitals, and in 400 miles of an intricate tunnel system built beneath them. The Gazan lives that are entirely real, and the ones simultaneously ridiculed in Hamas's obscene mockery of a daily climbing death count, despite events on the ground, and that is evidently false and repeatedly debunked. In another highly effective weapon against Israel, recurring across media so frequently, even politicians who once noted the numbers as theatrics have begun to use them too. So powerful is the mockingbird effect. Inversion, along with the word absurd, is the recurring description of what is met with in this war, which Hamas initiated by a massacre so savage it's been etched into our bones for generations to come. It is a war of generational hate and will not be stopped with reason, logic, or further appeasement, for theirs is a death cult. It is a war enacted by those whose worship of death is a desecration of life, whose warfare strategy consists of the sacrifice of their own community and the systematic acts of rape and torture and murder of even the vulnerable, while having the brazen audacity to call it God's will. It is the inversion of a narrative on its head when a recognized and designated terrorist organization, acting as the open proxy to Iran's global threat, are permitted the thievery in broad daylight of the events that we in Israel experience collectively. Events of attack and suffering, which are quickly usurped to be claimed as their own while Israel is still recording the evidence. That evidence later reaches the world stage in a watered down, but look, it having been already accepted without confirmation a moment before. The reality is this: Israel and its population of mothers and fathers and children, of Jews and Arabs and Christians and Muslims, experience a war for which the rest of the world has no precedence. And so it is imperative to those who have a genuine desire for understanding to listen to all perspectives and related documentation. Urban warfare expert and West Point professor John Spencer has documented absolutely essential research towards this aim, and its details will refocus understanding to what we have here addressed. Like in our previous discussions with Professor Francisco Gil White, one recognizes truth, objective truth, when the model simply fits, when piece after piece of the puzzle settles in snugly to its match. It is for this reason that we welcome today Omri Azulai to illustrate these points. Omri is a lawyer and father of three living in the center of the country. In his wartime role, he serves in Combat Engineering Battalion 271 as a fighter trained in infantry and explosives. Omri has taken the time to join us today to discuss what he has seen, learned, and experienced firsthand. Omri, welcome and thank you.
Hey, Lana.
Hi, Omri. Good to have you here. All right, Omri, let's start off, I think, in brief. Tell us what's your expertise and what's your job in the battlefield?
Okay, first of all, I want to say thank you for having me. And it was a beautiful, powerful intro you just gave. I enlisted to the Army 2004 when I was 18, like the rest of Israelis. And I joined the Combat Engineering Corps. And the operative of this corps is to annihilate any challenges or any infrastructure or grounded challenges we have as an army. So for some, if there is a tunnel, we have the tools to go over it. So the other units of the army can go over it. If there's a minefield, we can blow it up. If there's places we need to ruin to make our troops safer, we do that. And so we deal with armed explosive, like hot explosive, and we have other tools to use for that measure. In the training, obviously, because you're going in the battlefield, so you learn basic needs and basic understanding of infantry, firing a gun, safety, first aid, and everything that the other units are going through. So that the engineering side is in additional for the basic fighter training.
Okay, so your work obviously is central to this war, since the tunnel system, which of course the Army did know about, right? We knew that there were tunnels.
Yeah, it's no secret. Everybody knew that. It's from a long time ago. It started relatively small and it grew to extraordinary measures.
Did the Army have any idea the extent of the system? Do you want to describe the tunnel system that's been discovered in Gaza?
In the media, they talk about around 500 kilometers of total tunnels. You have different tunnels. You have operational tunnels, which are relatively small, and you have the big infrastructure tunnels that you see sometimes. They can have vehicles going through them. They're going usually from one terror place to another, and they used to move firearms, explosive. The last 5 months, also hostages, food for the terrorists. And everything you can think about moving on top of the land, they do it under the land because they know our capabilities. And that's where they took their fighting strategies. This is the new fighting strategies. It's not new, it's old. But this is the first time we, as an army, take it head on and really fight it head to head.
Tell me, when you entered the battlefield, can you explain any processes that you went through, from what you knew going in and to what you and your battalion discovered and adapted to throughout the many battles that happened across Gaza?
Yeah. So we went in Khan Yunis. I think it was early December or late November. I think it was early December. We were the our battalion was one of the first battalions that entered first to Khan Yunis. That was the first time we entered, because up until then we were on the north side of the strip. It was a battlefield, as you think about it. Lots of booms from cannons, from fire jets, from us, from tanks. Everything is ruined because we're making a path for us and for the rest of the units coming after us. That was the mission we had. The big mission is to make a path from the border to the sea. And the first few days were just as you see in war movies, very hectic, split decision of life-changing decision every split seconds. So many things to consider it until you find some kind of a shelter. But it was very organized. We felt very secure, very organized. We understood the mission. We knew exactly what to do. Your basic instinct and your basic training come to life. It's like a switch button. What we do then is the whole force, which are a few battalions, they spread out to areas. Every battalion is supervising an area, and you have to do the basic things that everybody knows. You have to annihilate enemy infrastructure, try to find and to dismantle as much firearms as you can, intelligence if you have everything regarding the hostages or anything like that. Also, we needed to secure the path that we did. So means clearing out everything which in a long range on the right side and on the left side, you can call it north and south side of the path itself, because this was to be a logistic path for our troops, for food, for logistics, for firearms, getting in and out of the strip. That's in the bigger picture. Us as a unit, our company, we took up 3 sections. We had 3 platoons. Basically, there is a neighborhood. You need to understand also that where we went, there was no civilians. They went away. The army told them to leave. They left. Anybody who stayed there is a terrorist. That's a given.
I want to interject there because I mentioned in the opening, I did follow a lot of John Spencer, who's an urban warfare research expert, and some of his notes there. And he said that they achieved up to 90% evacuation of civilians. And I want to talk about the extraordinary measures that the IDF has taken to notify and evacuate civilians, and to note that the 90% that have been evacuated was in every previous example of war and battles before is the very most that any country has ever achieved.
That sounds about right. I don't know about other wars, but I can tell you I've been there for 2 months in the middle of everything. Every day we had missions, every day we had close encounters and actual fighting. And I can tell you the companies that were in our area found, I think, maybe 2 or 3 times civilians, actual civilians, people, old people that were left behind. And one time also a mother and a child, they were suspected of being like a sightseeing for the terrorists. Yeah, they were spotting them. So, but we got them. Essentially, it was no civilians at all.
Right.
Always no terrorists, people who fought. That's it. No, you don't see any kids, no elderly people, nothing. They all gone. I'm happy they did so. The military has dropped flyers, warned them. I heard they sent SMSs to their phones.
Right. We should say that the unprecedented efforts that the IDF made, which U.S. Army has also dropped flyers on, civilians to evacuate in the past. But you had soldiers on the phones to millions of people. They sent text messages. They
Yeah,
had drones which dropped speakers onto the ground, giving them days and weeks. You know what he said, which boggles my mind? Apparently, Israel published maps of our war response. They published them so that people would actually know where we were arriving to next. Absolutely unheard of, mind boggling efforts. Which brings us back to the earlier point. The civilians in Gaza are themselves, in part, the battlefield. Them and the tunnels, it's crucial to paint the picture of the battlefield. And I want to add to what you're describing is that over 15 years, Hamas was able to turn the entire territory of Gaza into a defensive
yeah,
area unlike
yeah.
any before seen.
Yeah, they did. Listen, their big break was 2005. We left it. I was there before we left it. That was the big break. They overthrown, I think, in 2006 or 2007, they overthrown Fatah. And ever since, exactly what you said, it's amazing. They made it into some kind of a fortress, the underground fortress. Outside, I don't want to say it's easy. It's not easy fighting, but there is a clear strong and weak here. You shoot every once in a while an anti-tank missile, but the sheer volume of our firearm is no match to them. Their only advantage is the tunnels. Found quite a few. My company, the army, found Baruch Hashem a lot. I don't know how much exactly, and I don't know what's the percentages of the overall tunnel they have there that we found. But we explored them. When we need, we destroy them. And I think that's the big challenge of our army for sure. In the beginning, they were told to go to the south, to Rafah and Khan Yunis. And then when we were supposed to go into Khan Yunis, they told them evacuate Khan Yunis and go to Rafah and the Al Mawasi area, which is near the sea. But from someone who was down there, like actually there, I can tell you it worked. I don't know if it's the right thing or the good thing, but it worked. We didn't have any civilians there, not at all.
It's a huge feat in and of itself.
Yeah,
The
it is.
IDF has met with challenge after challenge and overcome it and gotten better at it. The tunnel system is clearly, like you said, they've made, it's again this word, inversion. It's made this inverse world and underground city of
Of everything. It's a city. It's a city for everything. You can live there. You can spend weeks, months, years even there. You have lighting, you have electricity, you have food supply, you have cement supplied, you have offices, you have corridors, everything in the big places. We found a few tunnels when we were there, mostly operational tunnels, which they use to go from one place to another if you don't want to be detected. We have special units that deal with exploring them, studying them, and eventually destroying them. That's also a big challenge for the army. And that's why everybody says it's the war of the engineering, because the tunnel system, this is the main thing. And obviously destroying all the infrastructure, the houses, the terror nests, everything there is terror, everything. I've been to, I think, more than 150 houses, or should I say more like structures there, because there were schools, hospitals, public offices and stuff like that. Everything is Hamas. Every structure you find Hamas. It's Hamas propaganda, Hamas leaders, firearm, explosive, rockets, launchers, proximity to tunnels. But I'm talking sheer volume, more than 150. Everyone that we went into, I can tell you that it's definitely difficult because the fighting is 360. You don't have a frontier line. We're on this side, they're on this side. We attack to the north, and that's it. You can shoot everywhere you want in this side. It doesn't work like that. You're in the middle of the neighborhood. You have forces from the west of you, from north of you. You know exactly where to shoot and where not to shoot. Friendly fire is a big safety hazard, and you have to think about it. But if I want to explain it very simply, you have two main threats. The bigger threat is the operational threat from the enemy. from Hamas and from Jihad Islamic terrorists. And there is a minor threat, which is not so minor, which is a safety threat. You have a safety threat. You have to be safe, whether it's with your weapons, with explosives, where you shoot, how you conduct, even when you walk, where you walk. I don't know exactly how to describe it to you, but I once told my friend that being in Gaza and fighting there is an insult or an abuse to all five of your senses. You see horrible things, you hear bombing all the time, the food is not good, the smell is horrible, even touching, everything is rough there. So what I wanted to say is you have to walk on crushed concrete, iron, sharp things all the time. So you have to be very safe. A lot of the time, the biggest challenges you have is safety challenges when you want to get, first of all your people safe and sound, and you want them all to be healthy before you can even challenge the mission that you have or the target that you need to accomplish. So that's that. And I told you, 360, you have to know exactly where your other forces are. You have to foresee in advance where you think the threat is and to get rid of it. Obviously, you're homesick and everything, and you miss everything at home. But I used to miss walking on a straight floor, just
Wow.
straight floor, just like walking and not having to jump over things or use my hand to balance myself and everything. And reminders, sometimes you have to do it running while shooting, and there's a big safety challenge there.
And I imagine also that within the rubble, how sure could you be when an area was cleared? Because I imagine that, not only as you testified that every single house held an immediate threat to it, but that even in the rubble, it's even less clear, it's even more chaotic. Are
Yeah,
there also plain clothes terrorists? Nobody's in a uniform, nobody identifies themselves saying, I'm the bad
knock
guy,
on.
you
Yeah.
know? You're supposed to differentiate that, they're hiding amongst the civilians. Is that also a challenge that even inside the
So
rubble there can be?
yeah, definitely, definitely. First of all, about other people, that's why I'm lucky enough to went into a place where there are no other civilians, because if you were there, you were a threat, and so you don't have to debate yourself and everything. No little kids, no old people, and stuff like that. Number two, about making sure, you can never be sure ever. Every garbage can, every stone, every brick, every tree can be something, but you do a good job preparing yourself to go into an area with a lot of intelligence, with recon. You have to look for blind spots and everything. And you have a lot of fire. You have tanks, you have us, you have air support and everything. So how you say it in military terms, you soften the place with a lot of fire. And when you go in with an engineering force also trained to look for suspicious things, wires, whatever, and you do it safely. Yeah, exactly, with a lot of force. But we did it. We did it day by day. Obviously, every day is a mission, but I'm saying we went through one structure, 5 structures a day, 10 structures a day, it doesn't matter. But we always went back to our little quarters in the end of the day. A few times there were missions that we had to go for like 3-4 days that were a little more far than where our area was.
Omri, how did you discover tunnels, or whatever it is that you're allowed to say about that? That's the main mission. That's the main defensive infrastructure. How do you get to them?
So the military have a few means. Some of them are secretive, so I can't speak about it, but they are means. What I can tell you is there's a lot of, it's not exactly searching, but it's, you go to places where you think there are, and you have to look for a lot of them. And when you find, you can explore it, because there are the tunnel itself and there are shafts. Okay, so one tunnel can have 20 shafts, and one tunnel can be just one branch of a huge tunnel. Just say, for example, you have a tree with a stump and 50 branches. So you accidentally go into one branch, you can find the whole tree. So when you find it, people that are in charge of it to explore it are being sent off. They come to the place that we found it. We use different measures, different abilities that we have to explore it. And when we need, we have also the abilities to destroy it. There are some other measures like how to find tunnels. There's a lot of things also that are still being developed, but I can't say right now.
Can you speak on how your battalions or how the Army's battle strategy has changed? At least to my very limited understanding, starting off in Gaza City was more of a mess, and then the Army learned so incredibly quickly. And then by the time they reached Khan Yunis and further, there was a lot more efficiency to getting the job done.
So from my point of view, something that not necessarily just only applies to the war, but for everything you do at the first time or in the beginning, everything, especially war, which is the kingdom of uncertainty, it's going to be hard at the beginning. Parenting, for example, opening your own business, it's going to be hard and you're going to make mistakes, but your personality and your perseverance will be shown if you learn and if you understand what went wrong. What can I do to prevent it from getting wrong the next time? That's the best thing. That's what shows true character. And I think our army has true character. Our people have true character. Definitely when we went to Khan Yunis, we did a few things differently, spotting places, using different tools that we have, being more vigilant, understanding that dividing the mission to areas for each unit. I think, I'm not sure about that, but I think maybe they put some more effort to evacuate the populations. We don't want anything like that to interfere with our mission. Our mission is very clear. I'm talking to you from a single trooper, single fighter. My mission, it was very clear. It was handed down very clear. We felt that the high command in my company, my battalion commander, very clear, very secure. It's not like sometimes, you think about you standing to a fight, go fight, do your thing. No, everything is very understandable. You know your mission, you do it in the right way. If someone gets injured, obviously straight away evacuation. There's no funny business with that. I felt very secure, very comfortable, like fighting there. And I think it's perfect, especially not at war. You can't judge a war and how people react there and how people manage themselves from here, from Tel Aviv. But I wasn't in the north of Gaza. I was only 60 days straight, Khan Yunis. It was very intense.
Do you want to speak about the general morale? I mean, we're talking about in the backdrop before this horrible war. We're talking about in the backdrop of a lot of division and left-right politics. And here you are all together in very, very the most extraordinary challenges without safety, without comfort, it goes without saying, and under the threat. And what's the morale? What's the dialogue?
It's a great question. First of all, everybody got a shock on October 7th. And as you know, everyone has a story where he's been or who he knew or how did he heard or what did he do or anything. So, for example, I was alone with my wife on Saturday morning because my girls were at my mom's. A different person was in the United States, came back straight to the reserve, my sergeant. And I have another friend who was supposed to be in the Nova Festival and he accidentally didn't go. Lost tons of his friends. A few of his friends got kidnapped. During the war, he heard from the news that they were killed inside while being hostages. And he has one friend there. Still, we hope he's alive. The party boy is an amazing guy. Some people were in the middle of school. Some people in the middle of work, owning business, in a trip. So everybody was shocked. I think the morale was, I don't want to say high, but the mission was very clear. We're here, we're fighting. We need to get rid of Hamas and we need to bring back the hostages. That's it. It was very clear. Obviously, if you didn't think the fighting was right, you weren't there. So everybody was there, understood the fighting. It's reserve army also. It's people that they're not like mandatory enlistment. They totally understood. They did their best. Except of finding a hostage, we did everything a fighter needs to do there. That's the only thing we wanted to do to accomplish. But we didn't get a chance. We didn't succeed at that.
Is there anything that you're able to speak on about the hostage situation as far as being in the battlefield? Is there anything that you're permitted to talk about and what maybe looking for them entailed or avoiding them might have entailed or those considerations? Yeah.
We definitely looked for them. You don't need to give me a mission to look for the hostages. You don't need to tell me, listen, one of our mission is you look for them all the time. Obviously, if you will have intelligence, they will tell you and you will do a specific operation. But that's for special units. But everything, you want to find them. Every time you look under something or under the staircase or you find a tunnel or you see someone in the building, so you're not sure if he has hostages there. We had one time that we were in a mission. We were supposed to blow up terrorist infrastructure. One of the commanders went with another two from his main unit to a house to clear it. They were shot at. This terrorist threw a grenade. They closed up on him. One of them looked under a staircase and he saw a leg with jeans and a shoe. I tell you, as he told us, the angle was not so good. So he took off his firearm, he took out his gun. So it will be more agile, more dynamic. He was afraid in his heart that it's a hostage. You're afraid. And it happened, that case when some of the hostages went loose. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for them. I'm sorry for the families. I'm sorry for the poor soldier who shot them. Look what they made. This is what they did. You need to understand that everything that happens, what they did, and the mistake that we do, this is all their fault. It's like a robber coming into a bank, the armed guard pulling out a weapon, shoots the robber and hits someone else. This is the robber fault. So obviously you look for them all the time. You're afraid, you don't want to hit them. Obviously, after we heard those news about this unfortunate incident, it's sad. It's just sad.
That's exactly right. It's important. I think that one of the hardest things for people living in the West to understand is the impossible. It's something we've addressed here already in the past episodes, is the impossible question that Israel is met with again and again. There is the definition of no win, the definition of facing a death cult that wants death, that welcomes death, that strategizes for it. They win if they die, and they win if you kill them.
You're right. It's because of who we are and who they are. You're right, definitely. For us, there will be no win because we lost so many. We've been humiliated. We've been hurt. We lost so many people. Young people, old people, everything. And for them, even if the war will end, everything is annihilated. I don't know how many deaths. As long as one person stands and do like this signal, for them, they won. We don't have the same measurement for winning or for succeeding. We don't play the same scale. We don't have an agreeable measure. That's the thing. They measure it by one thing, and we measure it by another thing. You can eradicate Hamas, but so many lives are lost, and I don't think you can ever see it as a full win. And for them, I told you, as long as one is standing and doing the V signal with his fingers, they're winning.
That's exactly right. Because our goals are not the same. That's the point. And it's not only that we are a people who values life, is willing to break our most essential rules of, those who adhere to Orthodox Judaism in even the doubt and even the potential of doubt to save a life. But it's even beyond this thing of life and death. It's where, when we get back to even the entire purpose of fighting, is that Israel is fighting to maintain its country, its self-determination, and its land and its sovereignty, while their mission is not opposite, is not to have their sovereignty and state, but that we should not have ours. These are not two sides of the same coin. These are two completely different currencies. And without understanding that, you will have zero understanding of what we face. And it's important now as any time to say thank you. And I have to run through it because it's so profound, the emotion that every one of us civilians feel when we say or even think of, never mind governments and never mind institutions and bodies, but the brothers and sisters and the human beings putting everything on the line, life and limb, to protect me, not a theoretical, not a maybe one day threat, but a right now threat to everything that matters to me, is something that to put that gratitude into words is only finite. So it's with tremendous gratitude that I say to you, that I say to all of the soldiers. And it is a profound experience of cohesiveness to have the clarity of what we're fighting and why. And that, halavai, that God willing, we will get back to our arguments of politics and how to manage this state in the many different ways, because that is what a vibrant democracy does, is argue until the majority wins. So really, it's important to say that. I want to go on and ask you, were there any aha moments for you? Were there any moments of revelation, either on any of those levels of battle, of what you're facing, of the immediate, of the, future, past, present?
Yeah, listen, battle-wise, I learned a lot because there never been a war like this. And I've been to Lebanon and I've been to Gaza before the separation, but I've never been to more of that. So you always learn. You always discover new things. Also, you have like older people like me, air quotes, like 38, 39, 40s, and you have younger people in the 20s. So you learn from each other, and definitely a lot. About the conflict, not a very big aha moment, but it was very surprising to me that every house there was Hamas. every house. Propaganda, leaders' photos, tunnels, firearms, rockets, in the mosques, in the school. Hamas is ruling Gaza now, and we need to stop that, whatever the cost may be. And once the work is done, I think we need to sit down and speak very freely and very openly about the future of Gaza. But we will do it when the war is done, and please God, the hostages are with us.
Amen to that. Omri, we're received earlier this week Ishur authorization to enter Rafah. Suddenly you have everyone across the world saying, don't go into Rafah. That's where all the refugees, of course, have gone to. And this is true.
Yeah.
There's a million people there. How are you going to move them out? But not only civilians are there. If it's my understanding, and please say better than me, it's very likely that not only the 4 known Hamas battalions, but that the top off of what's been pushed down the strip is likely some 40% of Hamas army sitting there waiting, preparing, strategizing with weapons, with ammunition, with leadership, with infrastructure.
Yeah. So first of all, you have to remember that they were ready with all of those things before October 7th, and they were ready in Khan Yunis before we went into Khan Yunis, and they're ready now. So as they're ready as they were. But I have good faith in the fighting preparation that we have, about the surprise element, about our strategies and our tactics. I believe in the IDF, and I think we did a relatively good job until now. I think we should just put our ear blockers from outside noise from the rest of the world. We need to have a deep, deep belief that we are doing the right thing, that we are on the right path, that we are the good guys. There's no such thing of, well, his side of the story is this, and this is his narrative and stuff like that. There's no such thing. Something happened, something traumatic has happened. It's very clear. We're in the right, they're in the wrong. It's their fault. They shouldn't have done what they did. So I trust the IDF. I trust our military to do the best thing in Rafah. I'm happy. It's not my decision of whether to evacuate or where to evacuate or who to evacuate and everything. I truly believe that our fighting experience in the last 4 months taught us a lot about Hamas, about this terror organization. I'm sure we will implement everything that we learned now in the final stage of the war. And that's it. No blinking. We shouldn't blink. No one that supports the good against the evil should blink. I have plenty of empathy for my people, for the people who got killed, for the people who were left decapitated or injured. You don't know how many thousand were injured. You know, well, 200 and something got hostages, 1,200, 1,300 got killed. How many were injured? How many lost the ability to walk? How many lost their legs? How many lost their earring or their sight? How many lost a loved one? You don't have numbers for this. They don't show you this in the news. You don't show, oh, this guy had 5 friends. All of them are gone. He's just left alone. This guy has a wife. You don't count him in any list. You have death list. You have a hostage list. You don't have people who lost everything they have. I think whoever has empathy for the other side,
You mean for Hamas?
For Hamas, yeah. And their supporters also. They have a lot of supporters there. It's not like an alien cult dropped from nowhere and took over the innocent civilians in Gaza. It's not. They grew up from there. It's a political, societal movement. It's a movement, right. And some people, it's not like I don't want to compare it to anything else. I don't want to make it political, but you have leaders and you have people who support them. That's how it goes. And if I just can use this platform to say something, is to just clear out the voices and the criticism and all the people that Israel's best interest is not their best interest. Whatever they're saying, it's not because it's good for Israel. It's because it's bad for Israel. And not the criticism for people from an armchair. They don't know exactly how to do it. You referenced before the specialist that specializes in this kind of warfare. He will tell you how difficult it is, how delicate it is. I just wish for everyone, including our leaders, our military commanders, and people, whoever listen to this, just silence down the criticism and do your thing until we finish, until we win it as much as we can win it.
Amen to that. Do you all have a sense But the idea of the morality of the IDF, of the pains that you take to preserve life, as opposed to an army being sort of the definition of that which destroys lives. Is there any sense of yours personally or your colleagues as being a moral army?
That's a very deep philosophical question, but I try to answer it as much as I can. Listen, you have some basic things that you learn in boot camp and in your training. You're a professional army. You're not a militia. You're not a terror organization. You don't use one people to do something else, someone innocent and everything like that. So you have some basic integrities and principles. You cannot use your weapon everywhere you want. Your weapon has one objective. You cannot play with it. You cannot use it. You cannot threaten with it if you don't need to. So those basic principles. You can't be a pacifist if you're in the army, or you cannot be in the army if you're a pacifist, because you're going to have to use arms. But it is very clear that what you're doing now is very necessary. Nobody wants to fight. You have to do that. You have no other possibility. Nothing. There's nothing you can do. If you don't fight, that's it. It's gone. And we have people there. We still have 130 something hostages there, and nothing can really be over until they come back.
That's ultimately true. Just like many of the horrors that have befallen the Jewish people, they change us. And words have been misused and taken and lost very much meaning. But the truth is that we really are still in October 7th. And we will be until our lives are not under immediate threat, until we can mourn. You know, we have gone from one peak terror to the next, to the next, to the next. There hasn't been a moment to release and diffuse. We haven't had a moment to mourn, to soak up the earthquake changes that happened from October 7th, and yet it's all systems go forward. And it won't stop. And only at that time when we do not feel under immediate threat, which obviously with Hezbollah looming in the north isn't going to be in the near future, this is what we do. And as you said, and as you personally, Omri, and your colleagues, and the entirety of the army, and the truth is the civilians here as well, because there is no place that is safe, not for anyone in really. I mean, that's really what the past few years have taught us, but certainly in Israel, in tiny little Israel, whose name doesn't fit on its little crescent shape on the map. It's a very surreal, overwhelming, constant experience of feeling the power of experiencing this as a whole, as a nation, and also the terror and the surreal repeat of history. I look forward to having some distance one day, God willing, soon, to be able to look at it as a whole, because for right now, we are all in the trenches, and that's the reality.
And it's funny because a lot of Israelis, they don't see it like that. It's very hard to go from the eagle's eye and to see it from the top, everything. Like, where do we live? What's the dangers? What's the threats? What's going on there? Gaza is like 40 minutes from here. 40 minutes. It's not like back in the day when you had the war, you had to travel a few days, send letters, and it's 40 minutes. When I go out from Gaza, if I take a car, I'm home like less than an hour. It's crazy. And I think living in Israel, the terror threat always around you, it did something here to people, kind of like push it aside and don't think about it a lot. And there was something on your news and blah, 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 and that's it. You don't see it as fully existential as other people. And I think that's why Israelis are so different in many ways. A lot of people kind of clear their minds. I think that people can see things very clearly, what is important, what's not. I think it's united Am Israel. A shame that we didn't need this to happen, to unite, but it is what it is. It's only natural. There's a lot of goodness now with the volunteering, with the helping out. Cannot even list you what they did to me as a reserve army fighter, and all the wives out there, my wife and all the other wives, staying at home, dealing with kids, dealing with everything. They really are fighters. They were with us there, and we couldn't be there if they weren't as strong. Because if my wife wasn't as strong and she would tell me, listen, I can't do this, like I'm collapsing, that's it, I couldn't stay there. I'll have to come home. But because our women are so strong and they held the fort so beautifully, I think that gave us a lot of spirit, a lot of ruach in the fighting. And they had a big part of it. I just want to mention that.
That's awesome. I think that's extremely well said. Um, And yeah, we are all very, very clear that it's all hands on deck and all of those shapes and colors of them are needed. Is there anything else, Omri, that you wanted to convey to the audience at this point?
I want to convey and I want to emphasize how important is backup and support when you're in there. Because you're mainly cut offline of media and stuff like that. You only listen to the news once an hour, and the only thing you want to listen to is has there been any casualties or someone gets hurt. But the support from the outside, the support from civilians, and for people that going on the TV, in the news, other Israel allies, people who support Israel, this support is very, very important for us in the army. Keep it up. They're doing amazing work and they need to keep it up. I'm not even talking about like money or donation and stuff like that. I'm just talking about conveying the idea and fighting the fight in the press, in the media, against all the lies. This is what I'm talking about.
That's exactly what we're doing here. It's this setting the record straight because there's something that's just a really rooted in your guts kind of feeling to watch the abundance, the flooding, the deliberate, malicious, lethal lies that are told about us. Again, we go back to the word of inversion of everything that we feel and we experience being taken and quickly, copy pasted, slapped on to the opposite. And as we see today, with everyone with a phone in their hand, and the online war is no less. These lies are powerful, they make a difference. And this is what we're doing now, which is piece by piece setting the record straight. And we have to go back real far to get it done. But this is what we're doing. And I want to say that one of the things that I have always recognized that Israelis, of which I am, at the end of the day, and can finally say that I am part of, is the ability to live in the moment. And whether that comes of the terror that you mentioned earlier that has been eroded and shaped and molded this society, but the experience of living in the moment, that there's a good song on, everybody stops and sings. And every time you see your buddy, you drop your bag and you hug him. Omri, thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you to your wife for hers. Thank you to all of our heroes, which are many and ongoing, and all of their families who support them. God bless you. God bless Israel. God bless the people of Israel. God bless truth and justice and objective
Amen.
good. And may we see days of light and peace and joy very soon.
I wish. Amen. Thank you, Elena, for having me. I'm sending my prayers to all the victims, to all the injured people, giving my support to all the army people in the side. My brother was there a long time with me. Thank you for this experience of sharing a few things of what I've been through and from what I think. I'm Israel Chai.
Israel Chai.